guys, welcome back to my channel, to part 2 of our Python series. In this lesson we will be learning about Python object and data structure basics. So let's get started. Okay, so basic data types. So we'll be covering in this section of the course we'll be covering key data types in Python like integers, float, strings, dictionaries, lists, tuples, etc, etc. These are your basic building blocks, so you need these. Okay, you just need these for any projects, and we will quickly discuss about them, and then we'll go into deeper concept understanding lectures later on. Okay, so first you have integer types, which are whole numbers such as 3, 300 and 200, and then you'll have floating point numbers, which are also known as floats. So you'll get 2.3, 4.6 and 100 with 0.0, which is basically 100, but Python still takes it as a float number because it has a 0.0 at the end. So these are numbers with a decimal point, and you have strings, which are basically ordered sequence of characters like hello, Sammy, that's the name, 2000, and also other characters. So you have lists, which is also known as list in Python, for Python. Ordered sequences of objects, so you can have in square brackets any data type you want, including lists itself, and inside that list you can have another list, and inside that same list you can have a dictionary or an integer. So it's basically just ordered sequences of objects. Okay, and then you have dictionaries, basically unordered key value pairs. So like you can have a key called as my key, and then you'll have a colon with saying your value, and then you'll have a comma separator for a new key and a new value. So these are not ordered. Just keep that in mind. You won't really see that they're unordered unless you have extremely huge dictionaries. They're really helpful when you just want to get a particular value from a key and not just go through indexing. And we'll talk about indexing and slicing in the future classes. Okay, and then you also have tuples, which are basically ordered immutable sequence of objects, basically lists, but they're immutable. Immutable basically means that you can't edit it or change it in the future after you have declared it. When we talk about tuples, we'll go in depth about the immutability. And you have sets, which are basically unordered collection of unique objects. So for example, if you have a list which has a repeated number or a repeated string or a repeated float number or repeated list, if one item is equal to another, then if you cast it to a set, you learn about casting in future classes, then you'll only get that value once. And how you write it is that so how you write it is basically it's curly braces, just like for dictionaries, but you don't have the key and value, you just have an object, comma, an object, and etc, etc. So for booleans are basically just logic value indicating indicators. So basically you can have true or false. We'll learn about that in depth when we learn about booleans. They're really helpful for if statements and conditional statements. They're basic. So let's get started with numbers. So we learn about integers and floating point numbers in this lesson after the overview. So there are two main number types. We will work with integers, which are whole numbers, and floating point numbers, which are numbers with a decimal point. So let's explore basic math with Python, and we'll also discuss on how to create variables and assign them to values. Variable assignment. So we just saw how to work with numbers, but what do these numbers represent? So in our code we can say that my dog is equal to 2, like my dog's equal to 2, so it might be indicating that you have 2 dogs, or you can say my cat is equal to 3, or you can say that the name of the user is equal to Haavish or Sam or Matt, whatever. And so before we begin, we should know that there are some rules for variable names. Names cannot start with a number, so you can't say a variable name is one number or 3 number, so you can't start with a number. And there can't be spaces in the variable name, so you can't say my space name space is. You can't have any spaces. Instead we tend to use underscores. Let's go back. Okay, you can't use any of these special symbols in a variable name, even in between or at the end or at the beginning. And just remember and stick to these rules because they will make sure that you won't get any silly errors when you execute your code. Okay, so by the way, you should always consider best practice by looking at the PEP8. That is, those are rules set by Python, which aren't mandatory, but they are good for best practice. So it says that names should be lowercase, so you should not have capital letters in them. And avoid using words that have special meanings in Python, like list or str or int. You'll learn about more special keywords in the future. So Python uses dynamic typing, which means that you can reassign your variable, which was an int, to a string, and then you can cast that string into a dictionary. Not actually cast it, I mean like change it into a dictionary. So this makes it very flexible, and it's way different than statically typed programming languages, for example Java and C and C++. For them you have to say that this variable is going to be an integer and then declare its value. This is good, but it can also be dangerous, because if you don't want to assign it to that type of data type, and then you might be using a library which needs that value, but then you give it a different data type, which might give you errors. So how can we assign variables? We can say a variable name is equal to whatever data type. So that's okay in Python. In other languages that's an error, because you might have to say int my dog is equal to 2, and for example maybe you have to say list my dogs is equal to that. But I don't think any other language uses the keyword list, but you get the point. So this is an example in C++, we'll just go back, of static typing. Let's just talk about these quickly. Pros of dynamic typing is that it's very easy to work with, faster development time, because you don't have to spend your time saying, oh, I want int of this, I want to make a variable which is an integer or a string, which doesn't really take up so much time, but it's just faster. Cons of dynamic typing may result in bugs for unexpected data types, as we discussed before, and you might need to be aware of type. So type is a function that we will talk about when we go into the explanation part. So let's just explore these concepts in Jupyter Notebook. and you don't have to be using Jupyter Notebook. You can be using any other platform that you want to. So I'll just open up Jupyter Notebook and let's get started. Okay, so I've opened Jupyter Notebook and zoomed in a bit and created some empty cells so we can get started. So let's just create a variable called number, which is going to hold an integer. So let's just say the integer is 100, and maybe we want to perform a operation which adds number to 10. Okay, so if we run that using shift enter, we will get an error because we didn't run this cell first, so we have to run that and then that. So yes, you'll get 110. That's just simple, of course. And then you can say subtract, which will give you 90, and we can also say that number now is equal to that. Okay, and we'll just run that, and then we'll execute number without actually printing it. If you're using any other environment or IDE or etc., then you won't actually get an output, because this is only for Jupyter. It will give you output without using the keyword print. We will not use the print keyword now because we don't really need it in Jupyter. If you don't, you have to use print so you can have an output on your console like that. Okay, I'll just take away the print statement. So with this number we can do multiplication with an asterisk. So 2 times 2, 100 times, sorry, no, not 100 now, 90 times 2, so we'll get 180, and then we can do 90 to the power of 2, which is with 2 asterisks, and to the power of 2, if you want to do power of 2, then 2 asterisks, and then the number. Okay, so we get that, and you can do this, you can test it out with, for example, the number 8 and get the value 64. Okay, and you can find the cube of that number by doing 3, and also you can do with power 4. So you can just do the power to the power of any number. So I don't think it's gonna work. I think it is. Yeah, okay, it is. It's an extremely long number. Okay. Okay, so cool. That's that. And then, for example, if you want to perform a division, you can perform division with a slash, and then you can say divide it by 9, which should give me a 10. Okay, but when you divide, remember, it always gives you a float number. So we can use this chance to test if we're going to get an error, because previously our number was a int data type, but now we're making it into a float because number divided by 9 returns a float number. So let's run that, no error. So if we run number after that, you get this, so no error. So typecasting, we don't want to really cover that, but I'll just quickly tell you, which is just basically int and the data type that you want to cast the other data type into, or like the variable or value into. Because this is a float, you want to cast it into an int, because maybe you just want a number which is not a float. And if you run this, you won't get any error, you'll just get 10. And to find out the type of the variable or the value, you can just say type of number, which is a variable we have declared, and we're going to get it's a float because it's a float. And now if we say we want to find the type of a list that we're going to create now, which is going to be that, and then hello, and the list is going to contain another list in itself. So let's just see what we're going to get. We should get a list, and we do get a list. And if we do a dictionary, then we're going to get a dictionary, and etc, etc. So that's all about the operations you can perform. So let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So that's all, and in the next lecture we're going to learn about strings. So if you like this video, please do like, share and subscribe. See you in the next one.
Please do like, share and subscribe.